Right, hello, yes, I'll be briefish. So my name is Chris Beeley. I work for Nottinghamshire Healthcare NHS Trust. I've always worked
Not
in
in
the
Kent.
NHS. Not in Kent, no, indeed. Haven't had the offer yet. Um, I've always worked in the NHS, so I'm going to be talking about the NHS a lot. I guess some of this stuff probably applies elsewhere. You can draw your own conclusions. So here's me on Twitter, ranting as usual about open source. Just to reassure everyone, normally in my professional practice, I do talk about open source, and I do it in a very diplomatic, sensible way, and I do PowerPoints and documents and explain things and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to do that today, really. I feel like that would probably bore a lot of people on this call. Mark assures me that among friends, so I'm going to kind of let rip a bit. And if you think I'm going a bit too far, some of you, then that I've hit it just about right. So let's see how we do with that. Right, so why does open source matter? Oh, I should have said right at the top as well. I meant to say this. I don't know anything about COVID, and to be honest, I don't know a huge amount about data either. So this is probably a little bit different to the normal things, but here I am. So my interest is in code. So I'm a data scientist, and I'm very interested in the open sourcing of code, which is what I'm talking about. So why does open source matter? So the first reason why it matters is if you've done some analysis, if you've done some work, we want to see you working out. And the second reason why it matters, to check it. And the second reason why it matters is if you've built something that does a thing, then we want to use it too. We want to either improve it or we want to just use it straight out of the box. So merely releasing the code is not enough for the second point. The first point is okay. You can just put it. I mean, I've seen some dreadful things, and I should also add another disclaimer because this is being recorded. The people in my region are pretty good, and my trust are actually pretty switched on as well. So some of the horror stories I'm telling are from far-flung places that I shall not name. But yeah, so merely releasing code, I've seen like zipped code that's not really supported anymore on a Dropbox. That is open source in the most sort of loose sense of the word. And it certainly allows you to look at it and understand how it works, but it does not give you any freedom to reuse it. I'm going to give a very, very quick introduction to software licenses for those who are not familiar. There are lots of software licenses. It's very interesting. If you want to use a different one, that's totally fine. But there are sort of two types, really. There's the permissive license. That's the MIT, represented here by the MIT license, which is a very common one. And that's what I call a Freedom 2 license. So the MIT license, pretty much you can do what you like. So the important thing there being that you can take some code that someone else has written, put it in a product, and then make the code closed source and then sell that code in a proprietary product. And that's the freedom to do that. It's a permissive license. GPL, which is a copyleft license, is very different. So GPL is what I call the freedom from license. GPL protects the community from someone taking some open source code and improving it and making it better and then putting it inside a proprietary product and locking it away. So the way that that works is that although you can freely reuse GPL code, if you do, you have to release all of the code, not just the code you release, all of the code under the GPL. And that license is therefore absolute anathema to proprietary vendors of software. So those are the two ones. So the four freedoms of software. So these are the most important things that we need to be doing with code. So we need to be able to use it, we need to be able to study it, we need to be able to share the code, and we need to be able to improve it. So what I've turned that into is I've turned that into the four battles. So those four things lead to four fights that I have. The first one is the fight to even just use the software. The second one is to share it so we can look at it, so we can check you're working out, so we can learn from what you've done and all that kind of stuff. The third one is to be able to build software and give it away, to collaborate either within an organization or between organizations, make something useful and give it away. And the fourth one is to actually contribute, to be a good guy, to be altruistic, and to improve open source code, not because it's a project or because it's funded or anything like that, just because it's the right thing to do. And hey, you've got a good idea. So who's doing this already? And people are often surprised about this. So I like to include this. So sometimes people think that open source is a sort of cuddly thing that kind of, governments and charities might do, but actually that's not at all the case. So Facebook, which I think most people would agree is almost a sort of canonically evil corporate leviathan in today's parlance, have a prolific open source program, which I'll talk about more in a second. Microsoft contribute a lot of open source projects. They contribute to the Linux kernel. They do a lot of good stuff, and there are other companies too. I won't go into them all now. So let's just talk very briefly, just to give you a rundown of something that happens in Facebook. So one of the things that Facebook has released is a package called Profit. It's an R and Python package, and it's used in data science, which is why I know about it. And it's for forecasting certain types of data. It's quite a complex forecasting task that they've done it. So they built this thing internally because they do a lot of forecasting in Facebook, as you can imagine. And they gave it away. They gave it away with an MIT license, which is a permissive license. Essentially, it's a do what you like license. Now, why did they do that? Now, obviously, I have no idea why they did that, but I'm going to speculate anyway. So I think the first reason why they did it is because often developers like to collaborate. They like to work in the open. They like to have ideas because they're interested in ideas. So I think doing that helps them to get good people and keep them. I think the other reason why they did it is because they want people to use it so they can get better suggestions about how to improve it. So people will send messages saying, oh, well, when I put my data in, it doesn't work properly, it does this, or I've had an idea, have you thought about this, that kind of thing. The third reason why they want to do it, to give it away, is because they want people to improve it. So they want people to go away and do bug fixes and feature things and just give it back to them. And that, if you go on the page, you can see people are doing that all over the world. People are coming on and improving this product that this evil corporate Leviathan built and gave away. And I think the fourth reason why they give it away, and this is important, I think, for people to understand, or certainly the people that I've met in the course of my talking about this, is Facebook are not in the business of selling code. You know, that's not what they do all day. You know, they don't employ managers who know to do it. They don't employ salesmen. They don't employ people whose business it is to sell code, and neither does the NHS. With notable exceptions, the NHS doesn't have the faintest idea how to sell code or who to sell it to or what to charge for it. And they just don't want the hassle of selling it. And I don't particularly know why Facebook are, switched on enough to think, let's just give it away, let's not worry about it. But the NHS seems to want to sort of hold on to everything. So how are we doing in terms of those 4 fights that I mentioned? So the use fight, how are we doing with this? So some organizations are still to this day fighting about whether we can use open source code. So for example, R, which is an open source statistical program that I use a lot in my work, people are reluctant to use it because it's open source. They have unfounded fears that it's insecure, or it doesn't work properly, or it's full of bugs or something like that. Now that is, ludicrous beyond words, really. I really am, to be honest, as I say, this is the unexpurgated version of this talk. I'm really tired of having that fight. Banks use it, clinical trials use it, Google uses it, NASA uses it. It works. The whole thing is a dead argument. So I think we just need to just stop having that. Right, the second one, sharing, and so people can learn. We're getting somewhere with this. I think more and more organizations are now realizing that it's a good idea to let people learn from what they're doing, and it's a good idea to make sure that they share things so they can say, we've done this, here's the working out, what do you think? And I think obviously COVID, which as I say, I don't really know anything about, pushed that argument on, which is really great. Building stuff. So how are we doing with building stuff and giving it away? This is largely a pipe dream. I'm prepared to be wrong. Please do contact me if you know. There are pockets, but I think still, particularly building between organizations, I think building something within one organization and giving it away does happen from time to time. But the idea the NHS would sort of spontaneously collaborate on something is, I think, not a very good idea. And in terms of contributing, sort of being a good guy, a good citizen, and contributing upstream, like I said that Microsoft do, the previous speaker did a really nice line for this, which is, does it pass the Daily Mail test? So yes, that's what I meant when I said imagine the headlines. Imagine the Daily Mail headline if they found NHS programmers sitting around improving Facebook's algorithm that's being given away. That doesn't really pass the Daily Mail test. However, it's being done by these big hard-nosed, corporate entities that make billions of pounds a year. So maybe it is the right thing to do after all. And maybe the Daily Mail, were they to say that, would in fact be wrong. Right, so what's the problem? Why are we doing so badly about this? And why do I spend so much of my time talking about this when really what I'd like to be doing is doing data science? So I think the basic problem is that the default is that we don't share. So I think sometimes a lot of people, they have this idea. So, we write 122 lines of terrible R that's very inefficient and not very well commented, like I do many times. And there's this idea that we can somehow sell it, that it's somehow worth anything, which again, that argument really needs to die. The code that I write has no monetary value, okay? That's just true. So it can be given away freely without any concern about that. And there are other reasons too. So for example, secrecy protects professional reputations. People don't want to give away their code. People are worried about looking stupid, and that's a natural human instinct that you find everywhere. I don't want to look stupid either. My code is not brilliant, although I'm sure there are lots of problems with it that I'm not even aware of. And I don't want to put it up on the internet because I'm really worried that someone will come along and burst my bubble. But I publish it anyway because it's the right thing to do. Secrecy serves the interests of the employing organization. Organizations don't want people poking around. They don't want people looking at the data. They don't want people looking at what we're doing and picking holes in it and saying, well, why are you doing that? And why does it do this? And how many people, they don't want that. They just want to just lock everything away and just do what they do, and we know best. And that obviously in the NHS was the culture. If you look globally at the whole culture in the NHS, that was the way things were for a long time. People, I often ask to see people's working out because I want to, A, because I'm just interested, and B, because sometimes I want to check it. And they're usually amazed that anybody would possibly want to see their working out. And it's often in an absolutely awful mess. And the reason why it's in such a horrific mess, of course, is because they never thought that anybody would want to look at it. And I have to say that many times I've asked to see people's working out. They've done this big flourish at a PowerPoint presentation or whatever, presented all these beautiful results, and the results are straight up wrong. When I check. And of course, it's too long and the conversation's moved on. So I think that's a problem. Right, so even more problems. So NHS contracts, again, in the main, are pretty similar in terms of intellectual property and copyright. So they include something, this is just randomly, I'm not having to go at this organization, they all look pretty much like this is just randomly off Google. Basically what it says is, if you write some code when you work here in your normal working hours, then we own that code. And as I say, largely that's what NHS contracts look like. And I'm sure there's a reason why they put that in. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not arguing with them, but actually that's just part of law anyway. In theory, I think they could drop that. I'm sure there's a reason why they don't. But in fact, that's just copyright law. It's called work for hire. And if you make something in the course of your normal duties, your employing organization automatically owns the copyright. So the reason why I'm saying this is because we can't avoid this issue, okay? We can't just wish copyright away because it's automatically assigned at the moment of creation. As soon as you produce something, it's automatically copyright, and that copyright belongs to your organization. So therefore, it's not yours to give away. You can't just open source it. You can't do that. Now, copyright matters. Why does copyright matter? So if you open source something, you don't have exclusive rights to make money out of it. Although you can make money from open source products, and people do, you don't have to be the copyright owner to do that. Anybody can do that. So it seems strange that people would argue about it. I think there are two reasons why it matters. The first thing is because they can relicense the code. So, and this has happened, it's quite rare, but it does happen. There's a big open source project and the person who owns the copyright thinks, you know what, I don't like this license, I'm going to change the license. And they change the license. And the people who've contributed to the code base and got involved with the project and helped write the documentation are not very happy because they're like, well, I did all this stuff under one license and now it's under a different license and I don't like that new license. And so I'm not very happy. So that's a problem. And the other problem I think is probably more common is just people just like to fight over things because it's human nature, isn't it? It's like kids in the playground. They want to be the guy holding the football at the end of the day, don't they? People just like to have the shiny thing. So when you're looking across organizational boundaries, and of course the NHS is split into, thousands of pieces or whatever it is, there's a lot of organizational boundaries to span. People just like to fight about it, and it's a waste of time and energy. So what can we do about
Chris,
it? So,
we're going to have a probably hard stop about 12. So hard stop at 12. So just to warn you.
I'm absolutely bang on. I've got my timer on.
Brilliant.
I'm doing it exactly 15
Thank
minutes.
you,
So
brilliant.
what do we do about this? So civil servants, people who work for the government, they don't bother about any of this stuff that I'm talking about because everything they write is copyright of the Crown. That's just how it works. So the Department of Transport don't have a war with the Department for Education because it's all, in copyright terms, it's all the same. And a lot of people in the civil service, certainly in terms of data science, are good guys and they release stuff under the MIT license. And that works really, really well. So I think basically what we need to get towards in the NHS is that there should be a presumption that it's all about defaults, isn't it? There should be a default that we release the code. You should be the manager arguing with you about why we're not going to release the code rather than you arguing with the manager about how we should. Not data. And I know this is a controversial point to make here, but in my line of work, yes, it'd be great to have data out there and synthetic data and whatever else. But in terms of open source, I think we need to just drop. It's a red herring argument people throw up about not sharing their code. Oh, we have to worry about privacy. There's nothing private in the code. Just get it out there. Everyone should just pick one of those two licenses I mentioned. There are other ones. If you want to go and find another one, go for your life. But those are the two that are common. Just go for it. If it's something that you're producing in your organization, just get it out there. That should be the default. Just release it. And if it's a collaborative project, if you've got 4 or 5 organizations all working together, it will be NHS organizations. There might be any kinds of group. Just assign the project to the Crown, assign it to a trusted third party and say, you look after the copyright because I don't trust that person not to relicense it and I don't want to have a fight. Just give it to the Crown and just get on with it.